because the pressure is just unreal to always be performing, and it is coming at you from every angle. Like, nobody's going easy on you.
Welcome to the Reflective Coach Podcast with Coach Luca. You can listen to the podcast on YouTube and Spotify. You can also find the podcast on LinkedIn and Twitter. So drop a follow, leave a like, and make sure you give this fantastic episode a listen. Within this episode, we have female professional soccer player Angela Boyle. Angela Boyle started her career out as a student athlete in the University of Oklahoma and Arizona State University. She graduated from Arizona State University with a Bachelor of Arts degree in Global Studies in 2019. In that time, Angela has been a two-time Defensive Player of the Year, Defensive Player of the Year honours in 2013, two-time All-Division second team selection in 2011 and 2013. She recorded 14 goals and 10 assists with 280 steals in 70 career games at Boulder Creek. She's ranked number 45 in the Southwest Rocky Mountain region. From there, she has gone on to achieve a scholarship as an athlete, as a Division I soccer player, becoming a professional centre-back. She signed her first contract with AC Perugia in Italy, where she studied out in Rome during that time before returning to the US following COVID. From there, she has secured a professional contract with MTK Budapest in Hungary, signing her second ever contract. This has been an insightful and fascinating episode with Angela. I hope you enjoy it and I hope you take a listen. This is Coach Luca, the Reflective Coach Podcast.
Just got done with the fastest but the worst arm workout ever, so I'm really tired in the arms. But besides that, yeah, I had a good day. What about you?
Yeah, it's not been too bad at the minute. I'm on a bit of annual leave, so it's quite nice to sort of have that downtime and that breather. And I filled my downtime with some football, so obviously I got a Q&A with you now, and then I got an under-19s friendly this afternoon. So it's an up and down day.
Good. Well, so you said that you're coaching then later?
What was that, sorry?
You said it's an under-19 friendly that you have later?
Yeah, under-19. So I've just taken over the under-19 squad at a club local to me, and we got our first friendly. Already we got one boy out ill, one injured. We're short because of holidays. So at the minute I think we're on bare 11 with possibly one or two subs. The first team want 2 or 3 players not to play, so we're right up against it in our first friendly.
Oh gosh, it's always hard when you don't have a lot of subs, but it'll work out. I'm sure you guys will win.
Yeah, hopefully. And even if we don't, it's only the 4th contact we've had with the boys, and we got some shape and stuff to do. So it's more of a training exercise in that sense. But if we come away with the win, then I'll be even more happier.
Yeah, exactly. I had a question real quick.
Yeah.
I know that the UK is also going through a big heat wave. I'm really not used to, as being an American, I'm really used to air conditioning. So since it's so hot, I have to have this fan on me this whole time. Is it making a lot of noise? Like, can you hear it?
No, I can't hear any fan, so that's completely fine.
Okay, great. Because I was like, I cannot get through an hour and a half with no fan.
That's right. That's no problems. It's completely fine. But I know how you feel. But yeah, it's actually all right this week. It's not as hot this week as it was last week or the week before. 2 weeks ago, it was mega hot here. But it's all right at the minute. It's quite cool and quite calm today. So
yeah, I was actually in Ireland and Scotland like a week and a half ago, and it was really windy. It was not hot at all. And then as soon as I left, I came back to Hungary, and it was like, oh god, like it was really bad. Last Saturday, I think it got to, I'm trying to do this in Celsius, I think it was 40, because it was 107 here Fahrenheit. And I was like, are you kidding me? That's almost as hot as it is back where I'm from in America, which is Phoenix. And I was losing my mind. I was like, I left Arizona to escape the heat. I didn't know I was going to be, so that was kind of hard. But yeah, so anyway, I have this fan, so I think we'll be good.
Yeah, good. Well, I'm very glad. And as long as you're relaxed, then that's completely fine. But on the back of that, a question for you. Is this the first sort of podcast episode or interview that you have done for this kind of thing?
Yeah, so I've had just kind of like friends ask me some questions, but I've never really followed through with doing a podcast. So there's been people who have asked me, but I've just not really felt compelled to do it. But when you messaged me, I really wanted to do it. So I was like, let's just put it in. And I'm happy because you seem like a really nice guy.
Oh, thank you very much. And, and that's what I want to get. And quite a few people that I've messaged because I'm trying to build on this and expand it. And at the moment, I'm trying to have a real big focus on the female game, especially because of the Euros and because when I was speaking to Paige Culver the other day, for example, we were talking around this sense of that there's not much information or data available around the women's game. And when you come to like trying to do some research or look at, professional players, it can be quite difficult at times. And so, doing this kind of thing sort of expands that horizon and contributes to it in a way, and sort of gets to know, anyone we have on as much as possible, really.
Hmm. Yeah, I agree. The data is really not amazing for, especially for players who are playing on teams who aren't like at the tippity top of Europe, and especially I think the U.S. does a really good job of having data now for the women's teams. But I even struggle sometimes to find my friends who play on different teams' data. Like I'm like, where is your player list? Where is your stats? Where is all this? And there's been teams that I've played on where I'm like, that information isn't even accessible to me. My games aren't accessible to me. Like it's very sometimes a little discouraging, but having these types of conversations really like brings that to light and makes people realize that that is something that needs to be addressed. So it's like that's why I actually wanted to come on here is because I think that that's a conversation that needs to be had.
No, absolutely, and I'm not sure if you've ever heard of the game Foot Manager, but it's something that I play quite often. It's sort of like a simulation game, and it's quite well developed in a sense of a game which is quite big here in the UK more than anything, and it's actually used by real life managers such as Jose Mourinho
Mhm,
to actually identify and use that data on players. And I was having a discussion with a streamer the other day who was streaming it, and I was watching and they're on about incorporating the women's game database into Foot Manager, and I was like, but there's not enough data even available to get that sort of element into it. And I think it's amazing the fact that they want to get the female game and especially Foot Manager because they incorporate a database of like 100,000 players, and
mhm.
getting the female game involved would essentially open that world up, which would be a move in the right direction. But when you talk about it, there's not enough data even available on players out there at the moment. If when I was doing some research into yourself, I can even write down how many professional games you played in your career, for example.
No, and that's something that's a little frustrating for me because, I've played just as long, if not longer, than some male players. And I have a lot of accolades that people would say, wow, wow, in person who know me, like who know my successes, but like a person such as yourself who hasn't met me before would be like, well, what does she have? Like, I can pull up this guy's awards and like all of his playing time and things like that. So it kind of sometimes gets to me and it discourages me because I just feel as if what am I as a player without those stats to other people? But that's when you have to come into yourself and be like, okay, I know who I am as a player, and that's great and all, but so that's good for myself. But when it comes to like the actual overall women's game, like come on, we need to have that system established. Like, okay, put it online. And maybe that comes down to budget and things like that, who's handling websites, who can be an employee that will actually do the stats and stuff like that. But yeah, I mean, I can barely even find my statistics. So I totally get that.
And that leads into a question that I had for later on. But how many professional games have you played in your career?
So, gosh, I don't even think I've kept like literal count, but I played in Italy. So I started in January for Perugia, and I played, I think, 3 games for them because I was actually going back between Rome and Perugia to do school and be in Perugia to play. But it's like a 2-hour train ride, so I was trying to do the training at first, and then we actually got into season. Probably played 3 games for them, and then COVID hit, so I had to leave Italy because I don't know if you remember, but it was like China and Italy were the most affected.
Yeah.
Everybody was like, okay, you got to get out of there. So I was like, okay. So went back to America. And then, so that was March 2020. And so 3 months with Perugia, literally, it was like really upsetting because I really, really liked the people there, and they are a really amazing historical club. So discouraging. So I would say that it was like three. And then when I moved to Budapest in January 2021, so about a year and a half ago, I started playing probably around April. I don't know if I could give you a number right now. Probably like 20 games because I've been plagued with a few injuries, some serious injuries actually. But yeah, I would say in 20 to 25 games if I had to ballpark it. I haven't really kept track, but it's been 2 years with some injuries, and I mean, it's been a great experience, but I haven't kept track.
No, and it's great that you've had that experience, and we'll delve into those injuries a little bit later, because obviously they're challenges, and what sort of skills you need, such as resilience, to overcome them, and how it might have affected you
Mhm.
psychologically. But you know, to be on the course to playing that professional game, and to be where you're at, and to even come around from the back of COVID, and still be pursuing that is a testament to yourself, and that hard work that you're putting in. But you do play as a centre back, I'm correct?
Yes.
And again, it comes back down to that self promotion, because I was looking around for some sort of things that you might have done before, doing some reading and research, and I came across YouTube, and the only highlights that were on there, or videos as such, I think actually come from your own actual YouTube, and that comes down to your self promotion. But very impressive, highlights, and fantastic at centre back. Have you always been a centre back?
Yeah, so I think going back to when I was about, I remember this is a good thing to talk to you about when it comes to like youth players. When I first started playing, I was really young. I was like three, and then I got to. I mean, I was playing like in and out on like like the young rec team leagues. Moved from New York, went to Arizona, and when I went to Arizona, I was probably a year after I moved. I started on a really competitive team. From there, it was like you're all competitive the whole time. But from the time I was like 8 until I was probably 13, I was jumping around positions like crazy. I had no confidence in myself because I felt like I wasn't established as a player, and even though I was really young, that's like kind of come on, take some stress off. Um, I was like really not feeling confident in myself as a player. So finally, one day, a coach named Paul Lester actually told my sister she needs to be a center back. And then he's this amazing coach. And then Les Armstrong actually became my coach. He's one of the most impactful coaches I've ever had in my life, if not the most impactful coach. And he said, "No, you're going to be the center back for my team." And I go, "Sure, okay." I had had like maybe a couple months there, and then so that was probably when I was like 14. And from there, I started playing every single game. Like I don't. I think one time I went up top just for fun. But yeah, so it's been, oh my gosh, it's been a decade of me playing center back. That's crazy to think about.
And do you think by jumping around all those positions, it benefited you in the position that you're in now?
Yeah, so I think that there's definitely something to be said about being able to play a bunch of different positions. Unfortunately, I don't think my strength was really necessarily a forward position. Maybe midfield, outside back, I was decently good. But having the ability to pass as fast as I could in the midfield really set me up for being able to be good at center back. But forward, I didn't really take so much from that because I was just really lanky and not really amazing at that. But one thing I did learn up top was how to be really aggressive in the box. My dad really taught me how to be aggressive. So when I went up forward when I was younger, he was like, "You're just taller than everybody. Just get up there." We work on headers every single day, me and my dad. So when I finally got to the center back position, it was like that was the thing everybody knew me for was the dominance in the air. So that really helped was kind of learning that up top and getting into the box. But yeah.
And it's mad, isn't it? Someone can sort of recommend or say, "Oh, why didn't you play in this position?" And you could have actually said, "You know what? No, not for me. I want to stay as a striker, for example." But how that changed position has led to you becoming a professional and playing, and being paid to play in that position. And that's how mad the football or coaching world is, in the sense that, oh, why didn't you play here? And then suddenly, it's led to a professional career, playing in that position, which is, fantastic.
Yeah, I mean, I think coaches are the most impactful people on this planet for some young kids, and kids who take part in sports, teachers and coaches could arguably be the biggest role models for them and be people who shape their future the most. Um, Obviously, their parents, but coaches really like things that my coach taught me when I was 8 years old have stuck with me until today, and that's what a good coach is. And I was so uh, I was just so lucky to have this beautiful, like strong, really difficult, but you know, solid foundation of soccer coaching when I was younger, and the soccer knowledge I've carried with me through this whole time. And the coaches that I was with and was under, or were under, was under, was what really got me to become a pro center back. I don't think if I didn't have them, I could have probably gotten to where I'm at.
And if they listen back to this or you share it with them, I'm sure they'll take a lot of pride and enjoyment in hearing that, and how lucky they were to have met and coached you. And when you say about those lessons from the age of 8 or things that you've taken with you, what sort of things would they be, or are, for example?
So the first thing that popped into my mind, I know this is kind of like a small one, but it's not, and every soccer player should have this in their arsenal, is the always looking over your shoulder, always looking over your shoulder. My coach Les, he would get on me because we would like anybody on our team because if we didn't look over our shoulder, we are not aware of our atmosphere, what's going on, who's coming around. So now it's literally just like a habit of mine that I don't even know. I could just be like going and doing some passing around. I'm always looking over my shoulder, always on my toes. Another thing is to always have confidence when you have the ball. Being a calm center back is probably the best thing that you can do, and not freaking out in the back. If you are the solid back, like the foundation of the field, that's what I think a center back is. You're the last line of defense, but you're also the solid middle in the back that keeps everything from falling apart. So my coaches always taught me that be calm on the ball. Don't be slow and like casual, but be calm on the ball. Have confidence, and you literally cannot mess up. And if you do mess up, who cares? Literally, just move on. Work as hard as you can. And that leads me on to my other lesson that I will never forget is the 5-second rule. And I learned this in college from a coach named Matt Potter. He said, I don't care if you lose the ball. I really don't care. But you need to work as hard as you can to get that ball back in the first 5 seconds. Otherwise, it's gonna be gone. And it's just the simplest rules that I have like concreted into my brain that help me to just work as hard as I can in those little and build little habits that really brought me to where I am and how I can step forward and win a ball and not even think about it. It's just second nature now because of those things. So I would say head on a swivel, 5 seconds, stay calm, and always believe in yourself, really. And I know that sounds corny, but it's really just like there's a lot of people who can walk onto a field. And I remember when I was young, I would just be like shaking, shaking, shaking. Number one, it's a game. I might get paid for it. You might have a scholarship to a school, but at the end of the day, it is a game. You're supposed to enjoy it. And at the end of the day, what's going to happen if you make a little mistake? Nobody's going to remember that. Move on, believe in yourself. You can do it. Otherwise, you wouldn't be on the field. So, those were the biggest lessons I think I learned.
And there's some key messages there, and just listening to them, and coming from the heartfelt position around that, and just saying football's the enjoyment of the game, whether you get paid for it. It is there to be enjoyed. I think is a real key message out there, because there's so much performance, there's so much stigma which can be attached at times, there's so much pressure from everyone around you, even the outside world that you don't even know, and just going away and enjoying it for who you really are, and the fact that you love and enjoy it is key.
Yeah. And I actually do want to bring up men in this sense. I don't want to just focus on women's soccer, but I think that because there is a lot more uh, consumption of men's soccer, there's a huge amount of pressure on these men to like perform at this level. And these huge club, Barca, just Manchester United, you know what I'm talking about. Just all these huge clubs. It's like they get on the field, and if they don't perform, it's the end of the world for some people. And the the passion I love from the fans and everything like that. But at the end of the day, you have to remember this is a game. And to lose yourself in that is really easy, especially with things like betting, with things like, just people drinking at the game or something like that, just getting really passionate about it. I understand that, but at the end of the day, the players need to understand that they came there to do a job, and that job is to play a game. And yes, the fans are a huge part of that, but the you're there to play a game, perform, so that you can keep your job, so that you can enjoy yourself. You got the best job on this earth, so enjoy it, you know? So I do feel for the people who are at those tippity top clubs that have to, women and men, who have this enormous amount of pressure to be role models, perform for like at the top level, that have all that pressure on them. And I hope that they can, at times just relax.
No,
So
absolutely. And, as much you say, you want to focus on the male and female game, which is great. One great topic that, I've ended up exploring since doing these Q&As with, female professionals. You're there to do a job, you're there to be, paid and play. And, again, there's that enormous amount of pressure. But in a sense of the female game, do you think it can be quite difficult to do your job and to try and secure a contract when you're trying to maybe start a family, at the age of 28, 29, 30, maybe, like Alex Morgan? Do you think that's an added pressure, or an added sort of challenge in a way at times for female footballers?
I have some water real quick.
That's fine.
So yes and no, because I think that just depends on what your family goals are going forward. And as a woman, I don't think that, you know, you need to, if you don't want to, you don't have to think about those things. Like if you don't want to have a child, like you don't want to start a family, great. Then you're on a one track to boom your career up. Yes. And I do understand that having a family is, it's going to sidetrack you a bit. But I think something bigger to look at is the fact that the the players like Alex Morgan, who are just amazing, but they are at the tippity top level, and they're getting a large paycheck in comparison to the rest of us, or not all of us, but a good amount of female professional players. I think that something that is constantly on the minds of women who are at, like, the lower clubs are, is this worth going all the way to my 20, like being 28 and not making enough money to even support a family? Like, there's people who can make 5,000 euros a month, right? But that's going to be at these really bigger clubs. They might be, or they might just be revered players at lower clubs, So it depends. I don't think that the problem is necessarily starting a family or something like that, but it is because somebody like Alex Morgan, she could go and she can come back just like she did because she's amazing, and she's got she has that under her belt. But the thing is, I personally have thought to myself, am I going to be able realistically to play until I'm 28? Because what what kind of income can I get? I have to have a second job to be able to support myself at that point if I want to have a family. So I think it's more than just family starting issues, or not issues. I don't mean that way in a negative tone, but just that's why equal pay is such a big thing. Is because it shouldn't just be men who get to live their passion and enjoy themselves and uh, feel secure. And it is a big deal for a woman to have to take 9 months at least, which is like, okay, I'm actually gonna say like a year at least, after getting pregnant, being pregnant, having the baby, postpartum, things like that, having time with her child, and then she gets back into her career. That is so difficult and such a big chunk of time. So I definitely think that women have a lot more on their shoulders, but I think it goes back to if it's even worth it to get to that level if you're at a certain income. Do you understand what I mean?
No, of course, absolutely, and it's these kind of adversities which, when you're playing on that football pitch, and then suddenly the fans go home after full time, they go home, they do whatever they would do on a Sunday, be with their family, go out, and they don't think anymore maybe of the game or even the players themselves. But for female professionals who may have put on that game, and then they might have to postpone having a family until they can retire, because then they're at a point where they've got a job or they've got enough money, or they have to get a second job while working because they afford it, or they can't afford having a child at that time, or they've had 9 months out. And the list of adversities just for female soccer players is endless, because these are all the unseen for those fans, that they don't see, that the footballer is put behind them or put to a side, because they're trying to be on that pitch and make something of their career. But
Mhm.
it's whether they've had that child, and then suddenly the child is missing out because they're at training, they're traveling, they're here, there, and everywhere, and then suddenly the child and the player misses out, and they don't sort of see those aspects and don't consider that, and it can be so difficult, especially on female footballers, and that's why there needs to be that so much more support available, and certainly grow the women's game. And I was talking to a professional female footballer here in Wales. She plays for Swansea City, and she was telling me she doesn't get paid anything, nothing. And she's a professional for a big club which plays in the Championship in Wales. They're probably the second or first biggest club, depending on what kind of fan looks at it. They've got £1 million budgets. And there was a friend of mine who's an amateur playing grassroots, and he was offered £60 a week to play amateur, and she's a professional.
That was gonna be my other point, is the pay gap is everybody, we could talk about it for hours, the pay gap. In any profession, women to men. Like, that's, so, but the thing that is truly infuriating to me sometimes is that I know men who are playing in the Serie A in, I think that's like that day. When I was playing in Italy, they were playing in Serie A and even lower, and they were making more money than me than I was making. And I'm really open about like I was getting paid lower than that, like, so the thing is he was getting paid like 200, 300 euro more than me, and he was playing at a terrible like a team that didn't have any budget. So it was really, really frustrating that they still managed to pull some money for them. And there's teams like, and I'm not saying anything against my team Perugia, like they gave me what they could. They had every every ability that they could give me, they gave me every resource. But that just goes back to what is given to these clubs as well. Is like the men's side probably had guys who were not playing at all, who were on the B team or something like that for the club, and they probably got twice my salary or twice my resources. So it just gets to the point where you're kind of like, come on. And so the Wales uh, girl, she probably was like in a £1 million budget. Like, come on, like, where is that going? If not to the players and to the coaches, and you can't afford just a little bit of money to give to a player who's giving their all, risking injury, taking their time. I don't know if she's from Wales, but for example, if I went and moved there, I would be moving from my family. You can't afford to give just a little bit of money. Do you know what I mean?
No, absolutely, and when you speak about that as well, and again, those adversities and those challenges, you've gone out from America, you've left your family on two different occasions, you've gone
Mhm.
abroad into a complete new environment, into countries where English might not be as good, and there's all these other contexts, and wider range of what you would have had to have sort of faced, and come up against, to create that career. But just leaving your family behind can be such a difficult move, and coming across from America, into European countries can also be a big jump in itself as well. From likewise, when we go out from Britain to America, that complete change in culture can be massive.
Yeah, I think that coming overseas was, to be honest, the best thing that I've ever chosen to do. I had studied abroad in Spain twice, briefly. It was like but during university. And I just realized not only did I have the travel bug, but I was getting very comfortable where I was. And I knew that after college soccer, that it was either go play in the semi-professional league in America, where I probably wouldn't get paid, or I could take my chances, go overseas, enjoy a new country, learn about anything about a new country is it's like knowledge gained and a great experience. So I chose Italy, and it was hard. The difference in culture is very vast, and not only that, but I mean, thank God I had these wonderful people who I was with. I did have like a gosh, what's that called when you have like a pillow effect? You like, I had people like a safety net. I had Americans around me all the time, and I met some of my best friends in the world. But it was hard. People didn't. I couldn't understand them. They couldn't understand me in the team. And not only that, but when I did go up to Perugia, I was alone. Like nobody was coming with me. A random person who I'd never met was like, just picking me up, bringing me to this random place in a car. So it was so, it taught me so many things. Like, just kind of go with the flow. Understand that, like, if you want to do this, you have to make sacrifices. You have to, you have to adjust. You have to be willing to work hard when it's hard. And then COVID hit, and I was really upset because I had just started, making friends and go back. And while I was there, I was working just a waitressing job, which I loved. But I decided, okay, I'm not going to let COVID just keep me down like this. You never know what opportunity is going to come. And actually, a friend who is from Budapest uh, was in my group in Italy, and he invited me to come to Budapest. So it was like, oh, Hail Mary, right? But I wasn't in the financial spot at the moment. And so I needed to work more. And so I decided from that moment, okay, I'm going to be working with a personal trainer every single day. His name is Wyatt Quinn. He's one of my closest friends, but he is amazing. And so every single day I would be like in his personal gym working just the hardest workouts I'd ever done, but really preparing myself for Budapest. And that's another thing is like I made all these friendships again back in America, and right when I was getting to this beautiful spot in my life, I was leaving, and I always had to make a sacrifice. It feels like I've always had to make a sacrifice to go and play soccer, but it was worth it because I met so many amazing people in Budapest as well. And homesickness is definitely there. I'll be going home and seeing my parents soon, so it's really exciting. But it creates an enormous amount of independence that you didn't even know that you had inside yourself. So I think it was the best thing I ever did.
And there's many questions off the back of that, just you talking, and it's so interesting to see that journey and how it's forged its way around there. And the move out to Italy, was that something that came your way, or was that something that you went and found, for example?
So the Italy move was to a school, and I was reached out by a recruiter. So I went, and then I actually, while I was there, was making a bunch of connections for myself to go and try out for teams. But this school was partially for soccer coaching and going to find a professional team. And for the first 6 months, there was kind of nothing coming. And finally, so I actually really got to experience the Italian culture, which was really cool. But it was something that I was kind of, again, getting discouraged about. So finally, Perugia came calling, and I was like, great. And I went. And so it was a recruiter that got me out there for the school.
And that's really interesting, and it's resulted in a great move and great experience out to Italy. Was it really difficult to sort of wane your way away from pastas and pizzas whilst out there?
Yes. So I have to tell you, when I went to Italy, the first 6 months, I was trying really hard to be disciplined, but at some point the light just switched off, and I was like, man, I gotta enjoy this. And I was getting discouraged about soccer. So I ate so much. It was ridiculous. And I remember when I was at Perugia, right before I was going to Perugia, I was trying to work out a lot more, get things done. But it's really hard to resist that pasta. and it's so good. So, I was a bit heavier and I was a little slower than what I would want. My agility wasn't where I wanted it to be. And so I think that by playing with Perugia, I did get that up again. But then when COVID hit, I was like, oh gosh, this is not good. So having that personal trainer was like a godsend because I'm not sure after having that diet change, it would have I would have been able to pull myself out of that really, so but not to say anything is wrong with Italian food because it is so fresh, the ingredients are amazing, but once you have a little bit too much, it's, like, amazing. So, recently, in the past year, I've begun to actually super lock down on knowing what is good for me and what's not. Sometimes I ignore the signs, but, nutrition is a huge part of being a soccer player, and I think that's something that I overlooked for a really long time because I was able to run a lot playing soccer, but once you're a professional athlete, it's all on you, really. You have your practices, you have your lifts, but if you wanna get to that edge on the competition, you have to do it yourself. Nobody's gonna sit there and mommy you the whole time and tell you, "Hold your hand. Okay, come on, let's go do some sprints." No, you have to do it yourself. So, that's it. Like, it's a huge learning experience for yourself once you transition.
And it's that self-discipline, which that you do need, and especially when you're out on your own, and it's all down to you. And if you don't have that self-discipline, suddenly you could end up finding a loss of your professional contract because they've gone, right, okay, you're not as fast as you was last year, or you haven't played as much, and you haven't broke into the team, and then suddenly without that self-discipline of maintaining that nutrition and that fitness and those levels, and pushing yourself further than the other players to maintain and break into the team and try and win that professional contract, can be so tough at times.
Yeah, I think the pressure definitely builds up, um and I think also something to say is that sometimes there's coaches or other teammates that don't really realize or have empathy for what you're going through. And, sometimes I'm going through my own thing and I don't have empathy for another person. There's been times it fluctuates where you're just kind of so caught up in yourself that you don't realize that your teammate is having troubles with their sprinting because let's just say a unique to women problem, their menstrual cycle. Like something is going on within them that they can't control, and that's making them slower. So they have a couple bad games, and then all of a sudden they're benched, And then so at their end of the year meeting, their coaches are like, and their managers are like, So what's the problem? You're getting slower, and it's just that was just like a blip in their performance. And I think that self discipline is something that you inherently have to have in your you can get to being a professional athlete without having enormous self-discipline, but there's also a lot of things that women go through that are invisible to everybody else, including other women. So it's definitely a struggle to, be at the tippy top and have your mind in the right place 24/7. So it's a lot of pressure. People think that, oh gosh, it's so glamorous. Like, oh, that's amazing. You get to go overseas and play soccer, do what you love, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, it is not easy, number one, to move overseas. Number two, it's not easy to be a woman in this football world. And number three, just it's not like it is a job. So it's supposed to be fun. Don't get me wrong, like I said earlier, but it is a job. I'm working just like you are. So
And no, it's exactly that. And, again, it comes to all that pressure and those things that aren't seen. And, I'm a football coach myself by trade. So I completely understand the flip side of that and how difficult it can be for any athlete or professional. And, what it comes down to and that pressure that is there, just for example, being at the top and trying to stay at the top, how do you maintain that consistency and how tough the pressure is, and just having that breathing space to sort of try and drop off at times and remember who you are and have that enjoyment, and then suddenly people start questioning you again because you're taking into your own personality and everything like that.
yeah, I think that there that mm, I don't want to like say it wrong, but I think that people the way that I always described it and was taught is people say don't take your foot off the gas, don't hit the brakes, don't even slow down a little bit. But when you've played as long, and this can go for kids who have been playing and like maybe it's just a lot of pressure for them because they didn't originally want to play soccer, or maybe it's just too much with practices. But like in my case, I've been playing for a really long time, and there's been multiple times where I've just been so burnt out because the pressure is just unreal to be always be performing, and it is coming at you from every angle. Like nobody's going easy on you, you know. And at the end of the day, people can, especially um, your fellow teammates and your coaches and things like that. They don't really have time to be worrying about how you're going to perform because they have their performance to worry about. So, and luckily, I've had really good teammates my whole life, but you know, I'm sure that there's so many players around the world who are just getting burnt out because people are like, "Why isn't she performing? Why isn't," you know, like, "Ugh, like she's just being lazy, blah, blah, blah." But maybe the player is trying to protect themselves from really fully burning out because they do love the game, and they just need to hold back a little bit before they cause injury, before they, like I said, burn out, or just don't find enjoyment in the game at all anymore because it's not fun. So, yeah.
And coming back to that enjoyment, there was a time when you were with a coach, Coach Winkworth, I believe it was, and I think there was a time when I think you were quoted on an article that you wasn't enjoying your football as much at one point back then.
Yeah, did you say, Graham Winkworth?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, so there was, while I was at my former school, which was the University of Oklahoma, my coach was amazing. Do not get it twisted. Matt Potter is an amazing coach. But you go to school, you're far away from your family, you're in a different environment, and maybe it's not the right fit. So I was not enjoying soccer anymore. And I knew in my heart that if I kept playing at in that environment, that I would most likely not pursue pro soccer in the future. There was a lot of different um, reasonings for that. There was social reasons, there was soccer reasons, there were school reasons, there's, you know, just private reasons, personal things. And I think sometimes players have to watch what they say because I really didn't want anybody to, I don't think anybody did assume what I was saying was that, I hated the University of Oklahoma, whatever. That was some of the best years of my life. But in a soccer sense, I felt like if I didn't move on, because that was my whole life, I wouldn't have played professionally. So what happened is I opened up my transfer to go, and I knew I wanted to go to ASU. I wanted to go home. I missed Arizona, and I wanted to go to ASU. So I opened up my transfer. Another school had contacted me. I called my old coach, Les Armstrong, and I go, "Listen, I'm sorry. I know you helped me get to OU." And he was like, "No, no, no. If you're not happy, we're gonna work this out, right?" And he helped me, and he was like, "You know, open up your transfer. Let's see what happens. Um, I'll talk to your old coach and things like that, and try to like smooth things over a bit so there's no misunderstanding." And so I opened up my transfer, and honestly, I don't know how any of that works when like what does it come up on like a blip on a screen? Oh, player open for transfer, you know? So I don't know how that works. But another team school had called me probably like 30 minutes after it opened. And then later on the same day, ASU called me. Graham called me and was like, "Listen, I want you to come tour the school." And I'm like, "I'm there. Like, I'm already in a car on the way back to Arizona right now, so that's fine." Because it was summertime. And I think it was maybe the next week that I decided to commit and go to ASU. And the thing is, when I went to OU, I had a full ride. When I went to ASU, I did not. I dropped down because I knew what I wanted. I knew that it was the right thing for me, and I knew that I was gonna love it. I was gonna be there with, Graham, who I just adore. I mean, he's a great coach, but he's also just got the most bubbly personality, and he's a joy to be around, and he made it really enjoyable. So, and he really wanted me to have like my own independence with being on the team and like be able to really come into who I am as a soccer player. So, yeah, I think there was definitely a burnout there. there was a possibility for complete, utter, up in ashes burnout, but I luckily made the decision to go to ASU, and thank goodness Graham wanted me, you know? I think it was probably one of the most important parts of my life was getting that call.
And
So,
it goes back to that enjoyment and realizing that when you don't enjoy something, that you had to make that call for you, and change all those things that you weren't enjoying, and it's led to where you are now.
yeah, it was definitely the hardest thing. I actually remember when I, had to tell my team I was crying. Um, I wouldn't say that I was, super uber close with my teammates at OU, and everybody knows that. I was very quiet at that time. I really wasn't into my personality as much there. I had a few really, really close friends, but besides that, I just was not me there. And so, but when I left, or when I had to announce that I was leaving, I don't know if these girls know this, and man, I hope they watch this, but they are all amazing girls. So I was just in tears because I was like, I have I graduated high school early to go to that school. So I was 17 and I was with the class above my own class. So I had gotten really close with a couple girls in that class. And then when I was transferring, I or when I the my class came in, it was like we were all these little kids like just growing up, you know? And so for 2.5 years I was at this school, and to just kind of have that every single day in that structure of, oh, you mind, blah, 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 these girls was sad for this there and just go, I'm probably not going to see a lot of you ever again. This stinks. Like, I hate this every moment of it. So it was really difficult to say the least. And to leave a school like OU was really hard because OU has these accolades that you'd step on campus and you'd be like, whoa, you know? So, and amazing resources, amazing people. So that was probably the hardest call I've ever had to make, was being like, full scholarship at this stellar school with these great teammates and a lot of success on this team. And I'm going to set it aside for my own personal reasons because I think that I can grow outside of it. And I left behind a lot of really great times and a lot of great people, who I still talk to and things like that. But it was a huge transition.
No, I can imagine, having an opportunity to have a scholarship and then, make decisions which, come down back down to your enjoyment. It's tough which you weigh up, right? Do I pursue this or do I go back on my enjoyment? And that's the way life works out if you, go into, the philosophy of it, because, if you had a magic crystal ball and you could look into go, right, that's going to work out that way and that's going to work out that way. All right, I know what I'm going to pick now, and you don't, and it's that difficulty of going, right, what do I do here, because you never know how one's going to work out. But it's led to you becoming a professional and making those choices which were true to you. So would you, in that sense, you followed your gut instinct and your heart on the basis of that, um over you thinking, right, I can stay here and do a scholarship, because but it's led to the right decisions for you.
Yeah. Everybody always says, like, people always like, don't follow your heart, follow your head, make the right decision. Like, don't go for the emotional thing. I'm sorry, I disagree. Like, I think that sometimes we can think our way out of some of the best things that we have ever had put into our laps just because we're like, oh, it could not work out. But if your heart is telling you 100%, okay, it's time. It reminds me of like a crab in a shell, or like, anything like they won't out of their shells, and they're just the pressure to get out. It hurts, it hurts, it hurts. But then once you're out, you're going to a bigger shell, and you're like, you're growing, you're growing, you're growing. So in your heart, or in their heart, the crab wants to stay in that shell. It's been their home for a while. It's like it's where they're comfortable. They're in their comfort zone, but then they break out of that and they realize, oh gosh, there's so many shells in this ocean that are way bigger. So um, I think that there's just you know, you know, in your stomach and your instinct, like just everything about you will know when something is not right for you, and what is right for you will come to you. But there's not really reason to stress it. Things that are meant for you will come for you. I really, really believe that. And so that's how ASU came in. And even though I did take a cut in scholarship, it has gotten me to travel, to be a professional athlete, to meet my best friends in the world, and to have this beautiful life that I have right now. And even though there are struggles every single day, and sometimes I look back and I have, you know, what if I still, even though I have those thoughts, I'm like, nah, like immediately, nope, nah, that was the right choice. So, yeah, that's essentially just go for your instincts and kind of there's always that little voice in your head who's I feel like it's like the devil angel on your shoulder. The devil is always gonna be like, you know, "Oh man, that's a terrible idea," like, blah, 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 and then, like, your angel on your shoulder is gonna be like, "Well, what if it works out? What if it's good?" Things like that. So, I was like, "Okay, my heart and my little angel is telling me to go for it, I'm gonna go for it."
And
Just
I get that entirely. There was a position once where I was actually offered two jobs in the same week. One was going in education and one was in housing, and it was amazing to have been offered two jobs. But
yeah.
I had a weekend to think about it, and suddenly the end of the weekend came and I had to make my decision. But my head was saying one thing and my heart was saying the other, and I ended up following my head in that sense. And looking back, that was the worst decision that I ever made because I didn't feel comfortable doing the job when I had done a day there before, and I interviewed for the one that I took. I didn't feel comfortable in the interview, and then my heart was set somewhere else. And from the moment that I took the other job and I started, I knew that my head was the wrong decision for me.
Yeah, there's definitely there's been times where I've done that as well, and I do want to address, like, a little thing or not a little thing, but, there are so many athletes in this world who are multi-passionate, multi-talented, and when I was a kid, I don't know if I was necessarily talented at this, but, I really wanted to be an actress, and even to this day, I love the theater, I love singing, I love dancing, things like that, and performing, essentially. So when I was younger, I had this thing in my heart, I was like, I think I was 11, and I was playing for a really strong team, the number 1 team in Arizona, and I was like, "No, I can't do it anymore." Like, I just can't do it anymore. It was a moment of burnout. I was like, "I'm not enjoying this game. I'm not enjoying how I feel when I play it every day, and, like, having to go do it is a burden at the moment," right? So, I kept playing, and at some point, I it was just like my body was like, "Ugh," you know, like, just telling me, "No, no, 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 no." But eventually, that was me following my head. I go, "Mom, Dad, I wanna do theater. I wanna try it, and I'm going to, and there's nothing you can do about it." And thankfully, my parents were like, "Okay, we'll compromise." So, they let me move teams to my local soccer team, and they actually wound up going under the same club that my other team was on. So I got to go to a team locally and do theater for a year. I met so many amazing people, and I got to live that out in my heart. And then when I was going to go to Oklahoma for theater. And so being able to follow my heart a little bit on these multi-talented things, every single child should be able to go and do what they feel like is the best thing that they want to do for themselves, at least at some point in their life. Because if they don't, they will have those regrets that they're like, "Oh, I wasn't allowed to do that," right? Like, and all these parents are just trying to give the best life to their child. And the reason we had compromised, me and my parents, is because they knew that they wanted me to be able to get in a good college and to be able to go and do these things. They saw the talent in me, and they knew that at some point I needed to be on a college soccer team because I I put all these hours in, and I knew they knew that I was good enough. So the children out there that are playing and teens that out there that are playing, and even the adults that are out there playing, like if you have another talent, please explore that because if you don't, like, your heart will be wondering forever what that was. And luckily, I was able to. I didn't wind up doing it at Oklahoma, but I got to do international relations into ASU as well, and that's why I decided to travel. So, following your head, following your heart, two completely different things, man.
Absolutely, no, I agree, and that leads into one of my other questions. If you weren't playing professional football now, is that what you would be doing, acting and singing, or would you be doing something else entirely?
Okay, so acting and singing doesn't pay a lot, but, it would've been amazing. I have a ton of family in New York. Maybe I would've gotten some opportunities. But, I probably if I didn't play soccer growing up, I probably would've wanted to be in theater. But if I played soccer in college like I did, and I decided, "No, that's enough for me," I really have no idea what I would have been doing. I have no idea, and I think I tell my friends this all the time. They ask me this question all the time. They're like, "Yeah, so what do you think you would be doing?" And I'm like, "Never thought about it. It was always soccer. That's what I was good at. That's what I knew was gonna get me to traveling. I liked it, loved it, everything. My whole life was soccer." So I tend to think sometimes on when soccer ends for me, what do I do? I actually started recently studying for user experience design, and that has given me a whole new passion that I've opened up to. So having like a secondary thing to kind of not a fallback plan, but having another thing besides sports is always good. But if you ask me at the end of my senior year of college, what are you gonna do? I'd have been like, something in international relations, So I don't know.
You know,
I don't
and your heart was set on that, and your heart, has ended up leading to a really good thing. And but if you're into theatre and acting, it complements some of the quotes that I pulled out from that interview. She's quirky with a sense of humour. She has a perfect mentality when it's game time and when it's not. One minute she's the meanest player on the field, and next she'll pull the weirdest crazy dance move in the middle of the airport. She has those types of personalities that make a fun environment. She's vocal, she's strong, she's aggressive. And these are just all words that describe your overall arching personality and what you bring to the team, and how great that you are in that environment, in that changing room, and that you embrace the role of competitive leader, and you're not afraid of any challenge or task brought upon you. So it just that just sums up who you are in one, really.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I've come to accept that the quirky thing in my personality. I used to be like, "Oh, is that just like me being weird?" No, like that's me showcasing another part of my passion, just being like a performer. I wanna make everybody laugh. If I can make one person laugh in a room, I feel like I have succeeded for the day. Like, I wanna make people happy, and by being a weirdo and being like the dancing crazy girl in the locker room and bringing that energy up, if that's what I can do to make people laugh, make them happy that day, like I am going to absolutely be the weirdest person in the room. So I have no problem doing that because he's right, and that was such a nice thing that he said about me. But just that switch when I get on the field, it's a switch, and maybe that is I never realized. I think it was always my dad who just taught me, "Hey, when you get on that field, you're strong. You're," and he was always looking at me from his chair, and he was like, just whistling at me like, "Go, go, go," just be a strong person, be a leader, talk, vocal, things like that. So, I mean, that's the nicest thing. I think like that's the nicest thing that somebody said about me. But definitely incorporated a crazy personality, a performer's mentality into my personality, I think.
Absolutely, no, I agree. And when you come to the performance, one question that I like to ask: do you have any superstitions before a game, or around that game time?
Okay, so I'm not a super religious person, um, but I do believe in God, and I was raised Catholic. So every single time I get onto a field, I squat down 3 times, and I draw a cross in the grass, and I kiss it, and I go up. And then when we switch halves, I do the same thing. So that's one thing. I try really hard when there's enough like tape. I tape my wristband and I write things. I write 2 Corinthians 12:9. And then I put a cross, but then I put the people that mean the most to me, so mom, dad, who am I playing for, things like that. And then I put a triangle, which is Father, Son, Holy Spirit. So it does come off pretty religious, but just who are you playing for? What is the most important things to you? And Oh, and another thing for my friends who get this is NPND, which is no pressure, no diamonds. So that's another thing that I always play. I look at it all the time and I'm like, no diamonds. And 2 Corinthians 12:9. I haven't read it in a while. I need to go back to that. But um, I don't know the exact words, but I remember when I first read it, I was like, wow, that speaks to me because I'm always sitting on the field or standing on the field after I make a mistake. And I'm like, oh my God, like that was a big deal, right? Back when I was freaking out, not knowing myself. Um, and this Bible verse is about, you know, make mistakes because you're made in God's perfect image. He'll bestow his power on you when you make mistakes because they only make you stronger. So that's essentially what that passage means. And so every time I would look down after I make a mistake, I would be like, it's okay. It's okay. So that's my two superstitions. I have like a really hard time with odd numbers as well. So all of my jersey numbers had to be an even number. But yeah, besides that, just that. My dad was 34 in college, so I always tried to get 34, but if it wasn't 34, I would try to get 24 or 14 or something like that, um, or some variation. But besides that, that's all of them.
And it's that psychology that you might not have, first noticed when you started doing it, that comes into it. And when you look at the overall, performance and little things that you do that get you in preparation, or something that can even throw you off just on that, little change, or something like that, it just opens up the complete difference in how you perform and that psychology and the importance of it.
Yeah. Um, there's so much psychology in the game. Like, there's a lot of people that say, "Oh, soccer's simple. It's an easy game. It's pass, 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 put it in the back of the net." Other sports are so much more complicated. I'm like, there is so much that's going on in every single player's mind, and arguably a center back has a lot of more things going on in their mind because they're like, "Oh, what's going on? Okay, how do we step? How do we adjust to that? Blah blah blah. Oh, somebody lost the ball. That's okay, but like, okay, the ball's coming down. Like just instantly. Where's my other center back? Blah 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 blah." I think that other players on other positions do that too, but there's so much psychology going on, and something that I want to stress is that something I learned at OU specifically, we had a sports psychologist come in and they taught us you have got to learn how to speak to different people, different teammates. Different teammates will respond to different types of communication. So, for example, even though I'm off as this tough person, and people always said that about me. I am not the type of person that needs a kick in the butt. Like, I don't need somebody going, come on, you need to do that, blah, blah, blah. Like, I need somebody to be like, that's okay. You did your best. Just keep going. You're doing great. Right. But then there's other people, like I had a center back who would always, when you're a center back, you have your duo. You're like, oh, okay, you're always cracking jokes and stuff, but you're really close. And my center back at ASU, she was quiet. Her name's Maddie Wolf, sweetheart, but she would just be like, "Listen, if I mess up, just tell me, kick me in the butt. Like, tell me I need to run harder. I need to get there. Blah blah blah." And I began trusting her so much that it was okay for her to tell me sometimes, "Angela, pick it up. You're not." So learning to communicate to the best ability for what your teammate needs to receive is something that was super valuable to my ability to start leading teams and things like that. And you don't have to be a captain to be a leader. There's many people who are on a field who are a leader, um, but learning how to communicate with people is probably the most important piece of psychology that goes into the game of soccer, football. So that was something I had to learn quickly in college.
And I'm reading a book at the minute by someone who worked in communications and was with the Labour Party here in Britain, and he was saying in the book it's that kind of communication, but you need to know the person on the end receiving it. So you can give the same message to 10 different people, but it's all going to be interpreted differently by all 10 people. So you need to understand that person and how they're going to respond to it, how they're going to understand it. And, it's the same for every different player in the change room. One thing that you might say, and, you brought a prime example of that then, is how you might take it differently, or how you need to be spoken to differently to your teammate. And it's about, that importance of, a coach and a manager understanding you as a player.
Mhm. Yeah, having an open conversation line with communication line, sorry, with a coach is definitely something that's a lot more difficult to establish for a player. I think you can talk to your teammates every single day and feel comfortable. Eventually you're going to get comfortable with your teammates, or a few of your teammates at least. But when a coach is your coach. Like, they are in a position of power. You don't want to say the wrong things like that. So having a coach, for example, like Graham Winkworth, that I felt, and Les Armstrong, I felt like I could honestly just say anything to them and speak my mind and it would be okay. And they've seen me make mistakes. They've seen me mess up ridiculously and take chances and take risks and seriously mess up. And they told me, okay, that was not good, but we can move on from that. And being able to establish that trust as a coach is something essential, I think, to building up the team's confidence in you, because being able to establish, I'm sure you have some players that come up to you and are just like immediately like, I don't think that's okay. We should be changing that. And to be able to establish that communication line is difficult to get to, but sometimes you just have to really work at it and chip away at people and understand how to talk to your own players or talk to your coach. How is their communication style? Do they like being talked to a lot, or do they just want to be, left alone a bit and then you can pop in every once in a while? So it's just understanding people and psychology. So yeah.
Absolutely. And when you speak about that communication channel, and at times it can be difficult to have that with a coach or manager. Do you find that more difficult being abroad more than you would being at home, for example?
So yes, I could not really speak to my coaches very much and managers. I mean, I was definitely the quirky, funny girl on the team everywhere I went. Like, it was kind of known that I was going to be the one that was going to be messing around. But when it came down to go time, I was also the one who was willing to raise my hand and be like, what the heck is that? Like, I need that explained better. What are we trying to do for this, that piece, things like that. And I do want to say that probably also came with age. I'm 25 now. When I was like 22, I probably wouldn't have said anything. So, or younger. But as you grow older, I feel like you kind of lose those inhibitions to feel like you're being judged or something like that. You start to understand people a little bit more. And asking questions is never a bad thing. Sometimes it comes off like the person is receiving it in a bad way, and sometimes they are. But if you don't risk it and like be brave and ask that question, maybe you will never get the answer and you will never be able to do what that coach wants you to do. So definitely I feel like there was a few times, especially here in Hungary, because it's such a different language. I would raise my hand and be like, I I need help, you know, and they would be like, why don't you get it? Right? And I'm like, because I don't know, I just need it explained more. And advocating for yourself is something huge when you go overseas, because you can sit there and easily just be quiet and just be like, uh-huh, I get it, take the easy path. But if you really want to understand and know and perform on, especially if you're coming off the bench, okay? There were some times when I was coming off the bench and I would be so confused because I would be like, "Oh god, like, I didn't ask that question this week, so now I don't know it," right? So the next week I started advocating for myself. "No, I need to know this. Coach, please, can we sit down and talk about this right now?" And like I said, that comes with age, but it also comes with just being able to tell yourself what's worse, asking a question and maybe getting a little scolded, or being on the field and messing up completely. So,
And
yeah.
and that fits in. I was on Twitter last night, and usually late at night I'm ended up reading, philosophy quotes. But there was a great one there. A man who doesn't ask a question, a man who asks a question is a fool for a minute. A man who doesn't ask a question is a fool for life.
Mhm.
And you know
Yeah.
you've just encapsulated that, and you know that philosophy that's kicked in is just that life philosophy. But you know, asking those questions, you know, and you know, from people listening who will listen to this, asking questions is so important. Having those communications, and you know, making sure that you understand what's required of you as a player, because you know, I reflect on what I do as a coach sometimes, and sometimes what I relay out and how much information is relayed, and the type of session structure that I've implemented.
Mhm.
There can be so much detail in there, and there's so many expectations and our transitions in and out of possession, etc., and whatever. You know, it can be lost, and sometimes, you know, if I was reflecting on it from a player's point of view, I must be like, "Whoa, I've asked them to do so much." So, just having that open communication and then being able to ask a question and creating that environment is so
Mhm.
beneficial.
Yeah, yeah, definitely something I think that's forgotten a lot is, um, the power difference between a coach and a player. Like, if you don't open up to the players, they will never open up to you. They like it's just how it works. Like, unless you have a few players, honestly, like myself, who will just be like, like I don't care about embarrassing myself, so I'm like, yeah, okay. But there are so many players out there that I'm sorry, like that's just not their personality. They don't feel the need to go and extend that because they haven't been given the safety, the security to feel confident, not confident, but they don't feel like they are being received. So opening up to your peers is essential. Like I've never handled a big team or anything, but whenever I was in sessions with like kids, I would be like, "How are you feeling? Like blah blah. Blah. Like, are you doing good? Like, how was your day? Oh, tell me about your day." I think it's essential to talk to your players. Is basically what I'm saying.
No, and that's a key point, and it, you know, it leads into another question. And even though you're abroad, and you know, you might have really good relationships there socially, and however close you might be with teammates, and you know, you can ring home at any point that you would need to, for example. But at times, you feel a sense of aloneness being out there.
Yeah. So yes, because especially recently, so I do have a boyfriend out here, and I love his family, and they're like family to me. However, there have been times where recently in the past like 2 months, because a lot of my American friends left, and unfortunately, I had built, I mean, not unfortunate. I love my American friends. They're like amazing. But, when they left, I realized I didn't really build so much of a network out in Hungary or with foreigners, other foreigners. So I kind of was left alone. And it was difficult at first. I mean, granted, I really love being alone. But at the same time, it was hard because I sat there and I realized, wow, I devoted my whole social life to soccer and I never expanded outside of that. And it has come to bite me in the butt because I haven't created a network of people that I can just go and talk to um, on my own. So that was hard the past 2 months. But anytime that you move overseas, I've not talked to a single person that has moved overseas that doesn't at some point or another feel incredible homesickness, maybe a little bit of regret and aloneness. But the thing is, I actually learned this a while back and I use it all the time to like kind of get my mind right, is you have to change loneliness to aloneness, which aloneness is being okay with being alone and owning being alone. But loneliness is like, oh gosh, like, oh, this is really bad. Oh, I have nobody to talk to, blah, blah, blah. So I was feeling really lonely lately. But to change that from loneliness to aloneness is really important if you want to take that step to move overseas.
You know, and again, it's part of that adversity and those challenges which people won't see because you know they just see the player on the pitch and you know what you're going through, especially you know by being abroad and at times being alone, and, you know, which is completely fine where you accept that, but then that loneliness does kick in, can be so difficult. But
Yeah.
to flip that onto a sort of a positive, um, do you enjoy scoring goals as a defender?
Oh gosh, yeah. I mean, there I don't think that there was a lot of goals this year that was me, but that is probably one of the best feelings ever. But at the same time, I people have told me in the past that I don't celebrate the way others do. And like I'm just like immediately go back to like I'm like, okay guys, poop, 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 right? But it feels amazing inside. Don't get me wrong, I have this incredible pride. Like, yeah, I got on the end of that. And it's usually a header in the box. But I don't want this to come off bad because everybody should celebrate their goals. Like, and it's amazing that you put the goal in the back of the net. But to me, I'm like, heck yeah, I did what I had to do, did it, and that's it. That's all I had to do. Get to the back, back to defending. Get your mind right. And now the score is 0-0. We just got to keep going, right? Always think the 0-0 mentality on the field. It's another thing my coach has taught me. But it is so fun and elating to score a goal as a defender because nobody's expecting it. Um, Sometimes people are like, because I'm really, really tall. I mean, I'm not like 6 foot or something, but I'm like 5'9", 5'10", and they're like, why isn't Angela in the goal, like up in the box for the corner, because I'm so tall. But because I've had a mask for my eye injury, I sometimes was like, I don't think it's gonna hit off my head wrong. Maybe we should just like let somebody else go up. So that kind of changed in the past like 6 months. But before, when I was scoring goals often, it was just like, oh God, yeah, like you get to run all the way up and run all the way back. You know that you're like that girl. So that's awesome.
And the three real points I want to take from there. I'm not sure whether you know the professional foot manager Carlo Ancelotti. Um,
Um,
he fantastic manager. He's managed Bayern Munich, Real Madrid, AC Milan. He's been all around the world and he's won Champion League titles, league titles. He's managed players like Gareth Bale, Eden Hazard, Iker Casillas. The list goes on and on. But he went to Everton, which is not a major club in England. But there was a player, James Rodriguez, I think, or someone else, and he had scored at that point, and everyone else at Goodison Park was celebrating. They were bouncing. They were so glad Everton had won 1-0 up. And he just stood there, sipped his coffee, and turned around with a natural reaction as if nothing had happened. And I can completely contrast and understand because when I've been in games and my assistant coach is celebrating, sometimes I'm standing there just like side eyeing him, looking at him, going, "All right, we've scored, but the game's not over. They
yeah,
could they could come back and score 3 goals now, and there's nothing we can do about it."
yeah. So that's actually part of why I try not to celebrate too much. And when my other players score, I'm like, heck yeah, like yeah, like sometimes I don't want to run all the way up. To be honest, I'm just not that player. I'm like, come on, come to me. I'm a center back. Come on. So, but I'm really excited for them, and I'm like, heck yeah. But it is what you're supposed to do, and so I don't want to be a pessimist, and I do feel like people think that that's kind of like a pessimist thing, but it's like anything could happen right now, and it's like now they're on fire because they're like, oh, we just got so it's coming down the center backs and the defenders' throats probably immediately. So you have to turn that right back on, and so maybe that's part of being a center back in my head. But yeah, I just am like, I mean, if I haven't scored in a long time, maybe I'll just like crazy a little bit. But if it's I've got a couple goals that season, I'll definitely be like, okay, let's just get back. So maybe that is a bad thing. Maybe I should. Maybe celebrating does bring a little bit more team. Is the word camaraderie? I think it's camaraderie. Like, oh yeah, like getting together. But um, it just was never me.
There you are. Look, a little bit of self-reflection as part of the Reflective Coach podcast there. But if it was, even though you enjoy scoring goals as much and you are a centre defender, if it was presented to you as if this could happen at, by the time your career will end or has ended, and someone said, right, you got, option A or option B, and option A is scoring more goals in your career, or option B is more clean sheets. Which one would you go for? More goals or more clean sheets?
Oh, clean sheets. Come on. I would always do clean sheets because as a center back, like there is nothing more prideful or like something to be proud of than knowing that, especially against those amazing teams that everybody expects them to beat you and stuff like that. But your defense has been able to manage to keep it out of the back, out of the net. Made him. I love slide tackling and getting out of the back and bringing it up. I love dribbling forward, doing that attacking type of thing. But I'm a born defender, so it's like clean sheets for sure. nobody's expecting me to score a bunch of goals anyway, but, I mean, I think a lot of people would definitely turn their heads and start noticing me a lot more if I was the center back that was scoring, like, a ton of goals, but if it came down to it, I would 100% choose clean sheets every single time.
Solid choice, solid choice.
Mhm.
And just before we let you go, you did mention and touch upon an eye injury.
Yeah,
Um,
um, yeah, go ahead.
no, carry on.
Oh, so, in November, this past November, I was going up for a header and somebody came up and headed me at the same time, so it was literally just a head collision, and at the time, I briefly blacked out, like, it was like, you, like, close your eyes for, like, literally 3 seconds, and you open them. That's what I thought I did, but apparently I had, like, kinda blacked out, but I was, like, kneeling down, and I have never in my life ever gone up for a header and lost in any way. So I was like, in the sense of like got hit and I was like down, I've definitely lost headers and stuff, but I hit and I was like, I just remember like opening my eyes and I was like kneeling on the ground and I was like, hmm. And I didn't think anything was wrong. I was like, okay, this could be a concussion, but I'm not really sure. I don't really know what happened. So I remember going up. The sun was in my eyes, so I didn't see this person coming. And it was a punt or a kick or goal kick or something. So I was coming back from the box in a corner up top, and so I came back and I was like coming back, and she hit me. And so I'm just kneeling down, whatever, get up. Everybody's like, Angela, you got to get off the field, and I'm like, okay, and um, and so I go over to the bench, and I'm fine. Like, and I'm like dancing things like that. I'm like, what the heck? Why is everybody surrounding me? People were surrounding me. And I was like touching my face. I'm like, there's no blood. Like, I don't understand what's going on. Like, why is everybody looking at me? And turns out my face was starting to swell up. And I was like, nobody's communicating with me. They're just staring at me, kind of. Luckily, one of my friends, Ebony, she's a nurse now, and she was sitting next to me on the bench, and I was like, Ebony, you're the only person I trust right now. What's going on? And why are they trying to take me to like the medical tent or whatever? And she's like, Angela, like, I really think you need to go to the hospital. Your face is starting to swell up. We don't know what's going on. And I like looked at my roommate and I go, no, we're going home, man. Like, I gotta get home. and, um, essentially they just took a picture and showed me and I was still really like against it. I was like, come on, like I don't want to go to the hospital. They're like, we just have to make sure. So make sure of what? So I go to the hospital. We were in where's Pushka's? Wherever Pushka's team is, that's where we were. I got into an ambulance and I had to be driven all the way back to Budapest, which was like in the ambulance was like 45 minutes, but it was a far bus ride. And so I'm just talking to the EMT and I'm like, I don't know what's going on. He's like, your face is swelling. What do you mean? And I'm like, okay, just having a grand old time. I go into the hospital and I was waiting for a long time. And unfortunately nobody from my team had contacted the hospital. So I was just like sitting there for a while. Eventually, I get in for a CAT scan or MRI or something, and they told me the doctor comes out very casually and just goes, "Yeah, you broke this and this very badly. Have to go somewhere else." And I was like, in broken English, obviously, because it was in the middle, so not he wasn't expecting to be speaking to an English speaker, an American, so he was just like, "Broken, broken, very bad. Have to go somewhere else." So I was like, so, my boyfriend actually came and picked me up and took me to a facial specialist, and they go, "You blew out your entire orbital floor, and you broke your nose broke your nose in a very strange spot. You have to get surgery." I was supposed to be going home to America in, like, 3 days, but the doctor said, "Angela, if you fly, your muscle could go up into the break, and your eye could basically get stuck like this forever." And so I was like, okay, I'll get the surgery here. So, by that time, my eye had shut completely, like, it was very, very bad, and I have never side note, never broken a thing in my body, I've never had a serious injury, never had a tear, knock on wood, but, it was and I'm in a foreign country. Never been in the hospital either. So, I go and I have the surgery, I am so scared. But have it, the surgeon was amazing. And I couldn't play for about like 2 months. I was really scared. And I had to wear a mask after that. So I'm still wearing the mask to this day. And at first my eye was really dropped, like because there was nerve damage. So my eye was basically like this. Now I don't know if you can really tell the difference, but there's a little bit of a drop on my eyelid. But it's definitely something that freaked me out because it was a face injury and my only injury I've really ever had. But yeah, it kinda did change the way that I approached playing. So, having a mask on your face is obviously gonna make you a little not confident. I tried to embrace the names like Batman and Zorro, but, um, it was a super life-changing thing. So, it's kind of has me questioning, what's my next step for my career? What's the next thing I need to do? And, yeah, now I'm pretty much fully recovered with my nerves, but it's definitely changed my outlook on a lot of things.
Oh wow, really sorry to hear that you've had that injury. Sounds very severe and you know scary just to listen to it. But obviously what you must have gone through, must have been frightening in a way, especially within your own mind.
Mhm.
Is the mask a permanent thing for you?
So I'm trying to figure that out personally because I am moving on from my former team. And the reason that I was wearing it for a while was because number one, if I break it again, it would damage my face really, really bad. And another thing is that it was actually my teammate who hit me. So I had this unnerving amount of anxiety around practice and things like that. So maybe going forward, if I do switch teams, like if or when I switch teams and things like that, I probably will try to not play with it. But the risk is kind of too much for me at the same time. So I still have it in my bag and everything, but I don't know if it's going to necessarily be a forever thing.
Uh, You know, um, there was a goalkeeper, Petr Cech. Maybe worth maybe looking into him, but he
Mhm.
he snapped his neck quite young, I believe, in a football match, and he had at least a year out, and then he ended up wearing like a rugby helmet. And he wore it right up until the rest of his career, right up until he stopped playing. And I
Mhm.
think he's in his 40s now, and I think he played a reserves game out of retirement last year, and he still put it on. So I can understand from that perspective, as to why that anxiety around it, obviously the risk, and he wore it for the rest of his career. Obviously, not saying that you should or anything like that at all, but to contrast that someone at the highest level in the Premier League who played international football, is renowned, a club legend, wore it in that sense from someone who's personally who is opening up here personally, who has gone through it, sort of contrast what you've seen from the outside, looking at Petr Cech, to hearing it from yourself,
Mhm.
is quite surreal in terms of the emotions and what you would have gone through and how scary that was for you, and how that has maybe changed your outlook and changed maybe how you go into practice and things, and that psychology around it is, again, it's those list of adversities and those things that people don't see, and how much of a testament to who you are as a person into what you've achieved and what you're doing now.
Yeah, and and thank you so much. I appreciate that. But this is just like a round like circle coming right back around to what we were talking about at the very beginning. Is the risk reward for a female athlete playing is completely different than to especially in soccer because soccer is a hugely paid sport for men. Um, is it worth me going and risking my face um, for a salary that is a fourth of what a man at the same level or lower would be making at the same, So is that worth it? Am I going to be taken care of on my next? There's always a risk. Am I going to have to pay for my own health insurance? Is health insurance going to be good? Will it be blah blah blah? Will it be this? Will I have the support of my team? Will my team in the future cut me if I get injured? Just so much stuff going in, and those factors are definitely worldwide and are not gender discriminatory, but the money, the salary, is it worth it? And full circle, like I said, it depends, and it's all a personal thing. Like, what is worth it to you? My face is something I super have to consider because, knees and everything, incredibly bad injuries, and you can have that struggle for the rest of your life with, like, let's say, an ACL. Um, for me, I think my face is probably something that I can't really risk. My eyes, my my mouth, just everything about it is it's very scary. So, is it worth it? Is essentially what I'm looking at now.
No, absolutely, and again, it comes back to that person and that person-centered approach, and coming back down to you and what matters. And when we spoke about fans who have gone home and whatever, in 20 years' time when they're just living their casual life, and if you had decided, right, my face doesn't matter, I'm gonna get into every header, I'm gonna chuck my head in everywhere, and then suddenly you got marks and injuries all over your face, you know. The worst thing could happen, and then suddenly, 20 years on, they're not thinking any more about it, but you're living the rest of your life in that sense.
Yeah.
It's again that crystal baller sense of, you know, how much you matter as a person. That's what it comes down to. Um,
Mhm.
and I was reading something great online the other day. We must look at players as personalities and people themselves, and not just as assets or things that are owned by a club. And again, it comes down to you as a person, and what you're doing. But you know, um, is the next move on the horizon, coming up very soon? Is it all agreed and in paper?
No, not at all. So, actually going forward, I am at this crossroads. I have an agent and we're still looking into options, but after that injury and after this season having, those psychological struggles, it's kind of up in the air for me what I am going to be doing. As a UX design student, I know that I have a career on the horizon in a different form. But written in stone, no, definitely not. So it's something that I'm exploring. Something that I have to come to terms with in my own head and maybe in my own heart. And again, I have to follow my heart. And at the moment, it's kind of pulling me both ways. Um, 22 years of playing soccer, are you going to stop or are you going to keep playing and push on stuff like that? So, big identity crisis kind of thing. But I do want to stress to younger players that and anybody who's playing right now who feels like they have to play because that's who they've been for so long. Change is inevitable, and you're not a failure because you decide to do something different. And you are always going to be bad at something at first. So please don't be scared to try new things. I was bad at soccer at first. I was very bad at soccer at first. So it's like I have this stress in my mind sometimes where I'm like, oh god, I shouldn't do that. Like I stink at it. Blah blah blah. Like god, like just going back to like little kid me. I feel like in my head, and I just want to tell everybody, like shout from the rooftops, like please follow what you think is right for you. It'll all work out. Your life is not going to end because you stop playing a sport. But if you feel like that sport is your passion and you want to continue on, it is the best sport in the world, soccer.
And that wraps up an amazing interview, which has been so insightful, so many key takeaways, so many key messages. And in my head, I was going to say, what three key takeaways would you wrap up with? But I think you've extended and hit on so many. There's more than three, which are definitely going to be taken away, and they're all so important. But it has been truly amazing that I've been able to get you on, and just speak to you and just get that insight to you, even regardless of putting this out on socials and trying to grow the podcast as such. Just meeting you and listening to you as a person has been really enjoyable for the last hour and a half, and just listening to you has been great. And it just makes me want to wish you the greatest of luck in everything that you do, and that you thoroughly deserve it, and that, all great things should come your way. And it's been fascinating, and you're such a great person, and I really wish you the best of luck, and I'm so thankful of your time coming on here, and I'm really glad that we got this organised.
Thank you so much for inviting me. Like this was such a fun thing. Sometimes I get scared of these types of things, but something in my heart told me to respond and really come and speak to you and speak about all the things that we've talked about. And I really wish you the best with your podcast and just in general in life. And I really hope that we can stay in touch.
No, absolutely, that would be great, and we'll definitely go from there. But I'm so thankful. I hope you enjoy the rest of your day, and thank you very much. And what a way to finish on that amazing smile.
Thank you so much. All right. Yeah, let's stay in touch. And thank you so much again.
No, definitely. Thank you very much. Bye.
Bye.